Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take the sources you send our way. Could be articles, notes, anything really, and we dive deep.
Right. We pull out the key stuff, the interesting bits, try and make sense of it all for you.
Basically, help you get informed on something fascinating, maybe find a few surprises along the way.
And today, wow, you've given us quite the character to explore. We're digging into the world of P.T. Barnum.
That's right. Specifically, we're looking at his own book, The Humbugs of the World. It's his take on deception, illusions, cons, all sorts of things across history.
Yeah, and through his, let's say, unique perspective as the ultimate showman.
So our mission, basically, is to figure out what Barnum really meant by humbug.
And look at the wild examples he gives, some funny, some kind of dark.
And then try to see, what does any of this mean for us now, in our world, which is just overloaded with information, right?
Do these old tricks still work? Or have they just changed shape? That's the core question, I think.
Okay, this should be interesting. Maybe a little weird. Let's unpack this stack.
All right, so first things first. We need to get Barnum's definition straight because he draws a really clear line between what he calls humbug and just plain old cheating or swindling.
Yeah, he's very upfront about that. Swindling is bad, period.
Totally. Taking money without giving fair value back, he calls that wicked, denounces it completely.
But humbug, that's something else in his book.
It is. Humbug, for Barnum, is more about using, well, unusual or even flashy methods just to get noticed, to attract attention.
It's the spectacle, the din and tinsel, I think he calls it.
That's the phrase. It's about making noise, putting on a show so people look your way.
Like, remember that story about the shoe polish company? Warren's blacking?
Oh, yeah, sending someone to Egypt to paint by Warren's blacking on the pyramid.
Exactly. It's nuts, but it's not like they were selling bad shoe polish, right? It was just an outrageous stunt to make you remember the name.
Precisely. Or that pencil seller he met in Paris, Monsieur Mangin.
The guy with the crazy outfit in the carriage.
Yeah, and a band. All just to sell pencils on the street. Barnum was fascinated, asked him, what's the secret?
And Mankin told him that grand secret, didn't he?
He did. First, you got to grab the public's eye. Lights, noise, spectacle, whatever it takes.
Okay, get their attention.
Then, and this is the bit Barnum really latches onto, then you give them as much value as you possibly can for their money.
Okay. So the show gets them there, but the substance keeps them happy.
That's the idea. That second step is what separates humbug from swindling for Barnum. If there's no real value, people won't come back, and it's just cheating.
And he saw this kind of showmanship, this humbug, everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Politics, religion, business, medicine, you name it. In all ages, he says.
He thought it was just part of how things work, tapping into our curiosity, our desire for something, different.
Exactly. And here's a really interesting twist he adds. Barnum kind of suggests that maybe the biggest humbug of all is believing that everything is a humbug, that everyone is fake.
Whoa. Wait, so being completely cynical is itself a humbug?
It's like that level of total distrust can blind you just as much as being too naive. It stops you from seeing anything genuine.
The distinction. Showmanship versus deception. Wow, that feels relevant. I mean, think about online ads, clickbait.
Totally. We're swimming in din and tinsel constantly. Barnum gives us a way to ask, okay, is this just flashy packaging to make me look?
Or is the flash hiding the fact that there's nothing actually inside? Is it a swindle?
Or maybe even scarier, is it designed to make us so cynical we just tune everything out? It's a useful lens, I think.
Look behind the curtain, definitely. But don't just assume the whole theater is rotten because a curtain exists.
Well put. Analyze the performance, but stay open to the possibility of actual substance.
Speaking of performance, Barnum knew a thing or two.
Yeah.
And he tells some great stories about his own exploits and encounters.
Like his partnership with Grizzly Adams.
Oh, the bear hunter. Yeah, quite the figure.
Barnum brought him into his museum, right? And the stories about Adams's injuries are just brutal.
Seriously. Barnum says his skull was literally broken by a bear beaten to a jelly. It's amazing he kept going.
Just sheer willpower, it sounds like. Pushing through unbelievable pain for the show, Barnum even hired a successor, Herr Dreisbach, because Adams was fading.
There's that touching bit, too, though, about Adams near the end.
Yeah, Barnum mentions visiting him on his deathbed, and Adams talking about faith, about finding peace. It adds this whole other layer to the rough mountain man image.
It does. But Barnum wasn't just showcasing humbug. He was doing it. The golden California pigeons.
Yes. Classic Barnum. Just takes regular pigeons.
Paints them gold.
And presents them as some super rare species. And the best part, An ornithologist, an expert, totally falls for it.
Studies them and declares they're a new species from Australia.
So Barnum just shrugs and changes the sign. Golden pigeons from Australia. Lets the expert's mistake fuel the hype.
And Grizzly Adams apparently wanted some, but made that comment like, yeah, probably as common in Australia as they are here.
Yeah.
He knew.
He saw the game. It's just perfect Barnum. A simple visual trick, playing on curiosity, amplified by misplaced expert approval.
But he couldn't fool everyone. That story about the fish.
The golden angelfish, right? Some lady in Connecticut took one look.
And just calls him out. You can't humbug me, Mr. Barnum. That fish is painted.
Yeah, even when he tried to argue, like, oh, paint wouldn't stick underwater, she wasn't buying it. Some folks just see through it.
So what do these stories really tell us about showmanship, about publicity?
Well, it's about creating a story, isn't it? A spectacle. Tapping into that human desire to see something amazing, something novel, what Barnum called the love of the marvelous.
Generating buzz, playing on curiosity.
Absolutely. And those exact tactics, they're everywhere now. Viral marketing, influencer culture, clickbait headlines. It's the same game, just on a different stage.
The digital world's just given us more tools for the din and tinsel.
For sure. Sometimes there's real value behind it, sometimes. Well, not so much.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Barnum really went after the spiritualism craze.
Oh, he had no time for it. Called it ridiculous impositions. He saw it as exploiting grief, basically.
And he put his money where his mouth was, right?
Yeah.
Offered that reward.
Yep, $500, a decent chunk of change back then for anyone who could produce genuine spirit manifestations under his controlled conditions. He was absolutely certain no one could.
Because he thought it was all just tricks.
Exactly. Simple tricks playing on that love of the marvelous he talked about. People wanted to believe so badly they missed the obvious.
Like the Davenport brothers, famous mediums back then.
Right. They'd get tied up in a cabinet and then instruments inside would start playing, bells ringing.
Quirky stuff.
But Barnum explained it was likely a simple slipping knot. They could loosen their hands in the dark, play the instruments, then quickly retie themselves before the cabinet opened.
And he noted they got rougher when tied more securely.
Yeah, like the spirits didn't appreciate better knots. He even suggested tying their hands to the cabinet wall to really test it.
Clever. And what about the origins, the Fox sisters?
Hydesville. The story started with mysterious rapping sounds in their house. They claimed it was the spirit of a murdered peddler buried in the cellar.
Except the peddler turned up alive later, didn't he?
Oops. Yeah, kind of undermines the story. Barnum also pointed out that the spirit raps answering questions were usually wrong unless the answer was super obvious or guessable.
And the mediums who gave written messages, test mediums.
Like J.V. Mansfield, the spirit postmaster. Barnum figured out the trick there too.
How?
They'd have the person write down their question for the spirit. The medium could often feel the pressure of the pencil through the paper and figure out the question, or at least the gist of it.
So they weren't really getting messages from beyond, just reading the person's hand pressure.
Seems like it. He tells that funny story about someone writing, "Are you hungry?" instead of "Are you happy?" And the spirit message came back, "Yes."
Huh. Cut them out. It shows how much they relied on assumption and playing on people's emotions.
Absolutely. Cold reading, exploiting grief or hope. Barnum meticulously detailed other tricks, too. Tables moving with hidden wires, ghostly hands made with phosphorus.
The cabinet tricks where the medium wasn't really tied up.
Yeah, using slack in the ropes, reaching around to play things while seeming restrained. He exposed how easily these illusions could be created with simple mechanics.
It really highlights that intense desire to believe, doesn't it? How it can just short-circuit critical thinking.
Definitely. And that dynamic hasn't gone away. Think about modern paranormal claims, psychic hotlines, even some online hoaxes.
It's the same appeal, right? Hope, grief, wanting answers, wanting connection.
Precisely. And today you've got slick editing, online echo chambers, AI manipulation potentially.
Yeah.
The tools for deception are more sophisticated, but they're often playing on those same timeless human vulnerabilities Barnum identified.
So beyond spirits, Barnum saw humbug everywhere in regular commerce too. Trade, finance.
Oh, for sure. He talked about basic adulteration, adding cheap or even dangerous stuff to products, like fake liquor made with, sulfuric acid and lead acetate. Nasty stuff.
He joked about needing a humbugometer to detect all the fakery.
Yeah, I wish we had one of those. And he exposed outright scams, like mock auctions.
Peter Funks, he called them, where accomplices pretend to bid.
Exactly. They'd lure someone in, make them think they got a bargain, then use confusion and pressure to make them pay way more. He tells a really detailed story about a clergyman getting totally ripped off buying a watch.
Ugh, and lottery scams, too. Those seem ancient.
They are! Letters saying you've won a prize, just send a small fee for postage or taxes first.
The old advance fee fraud.
Barnum couldn't believe people fell for it, called it wretched balderdash. But again, it plays on that lure of easy money. Get rich quick.
Which leads right into the bigger financial humbugs, speculative bubbles.
Yeah, he covers those too.
Yeah.
Fake coal mines where people salted the land with coal, or the absurdity of trying to dig for coal in the wrong kind of rock.
Little scams. But then the massive ones.
Right, Tulipomania in Holland. People paying fortunes for tulip bulbs.
Prices totally disconnected from any real value, just hype.
Pure mania, until it crashed, of course. And then the South Sea Bubble in England and John Law's Mississippi scheme in France.
Companies taking on government debt, stock prices soaring based on what? Promises.
Exactly. Wild promotions, speculation gone mad. He details how organizers, like in his petroleum humbug example, would get respected names involved by giving them free stock, list assets they didn't even own yet, all to inflate the stock price and sell out before the inevitable collapse.
Wow, that sounds depressingly familiar. Modern Ponzi schemes, crypto bubbles, meme stocks sometimes.
The patterns are identical. Hype over substance, promises of impossible returns, using social proof or respected names to build false credibility, speculation driving prices far beyond intrinsic value. Barnum's examples are like historical blueprints for scams we still see today.
It's a strong reminder to look for the actual value, not just the buzz.
Always. Vigilance is key.
Okay, what about medicine? Barnum had strong opinions there too.
He did. He acknowledged that even legitimate doctors rely a bit on nature and the patient's mind, their imagination, but quacks. He saw them as pushing useless or poisonous messes.
He mentions that eye water seller in Paris.
Yeah, whose widow kept selling plain-colored water after he died, and it worked just as well. Suggests belief was doing most of the heavy lifting.
And those specific scams, like old sands of life.
Where the recipe called for one super expensive ingredient you had to buy from the cellar? Total scam. Or Roback the Great and his hashish candy that supposedly cured everything, backed by fake endorsements.
It's preying on desperation again, isn't it?
Absolutely. People suffering or scared will grasp at straws, especially if the presentation is convincing fancy titles, impressive claims, maybe a few anecdotes that sound like genuine cures.
And beyond quack medicine, he looked at other supernatural beliefs, older ones.
Yeah, he saw ancient practices like the Greek oracles giving super vague answers.
Like Croesus being told he'd destroy a great empire, but it was his own.
Exactly. Ambiguity as a shield. Or augury, reading bird flight or animal guts, often used by priests or politicians to manipulate events. He saw these as humbugs designed to control people through fear and mystery.
What about things like haunted houses?
He gives examples where hauntings were faked monks wanting a palace, so they faked a ghost. And he includes a really detailed account from someone named Kirby, who stayed in a haunted house, investigated carefully, and found the whole setup, hidden wires, chemical reactions, maybe even a galvanic battery creating spooky sounds and lights.
So, stripping away the magic, finding the mechanics.
That was Barnum's approach. Whether it's a magic spell, a ghost, a miracle cure, he looked for the trick, the mundane explanation. He believed so much of it relied on people wanting to believe, on fear, on suggestibility.
That love of the marvelous again. It can really cloud judgment.
It seems to be a recurring theme, doesn't it?
It really does. Now, Barnum also profiled some grand imposters, people whose whole lives were a kind of humbug.
Yeah, individuals who built these incredibly elaborate false personas, like Princess Caribou.
She just shows up in England, claims she's royalty from some exotic land, speaks a made-up language.
Had a whole backstory, weird clothes, even a hired entourage. Completely fooled high society for a while.
Until the truth came out, she was just a regular English girl, Mary Wilcox, and her agent was in on the scam.
Total performance art, basically. It shows how a compelling, mysterious narrative can totally capture people's imagination.
And the Countess Saint-Germain, he sounds even wilder.
Oh, definitely. Barnum calls him a magnificent humbug. This guy claimed to be immortal, possessed the elixir of life.
He knew everything, spoke all languages, never seemed to eat.
Exactly. Cultivated this incredible air of mystery and ancient wisdom, made himself seem completely extraordinary.
What is it about figures like that? Why do they fascinate us so much?
I think it's the sheer nerve, maybe, the audacity of the lie, the skill it takes to pull it off. It's like watching a high-stakes performance.
And you see echoes today, right? People creating completely fake online lives, con artists who charm their way into fortunes.
For sure. The platforms change. Social media makes it easier to project a false image globally, but the basic con is the same. Build a believable facade, exploit trust and aspiration.
Barnum also distinguished between general heathen humbugs, like priests using tricks, and specific religious impositions.
Right. He saw the latter as cases where individuals started new movements based on their own, often deliberate deceptions, like Matthias the prophet.
Robert Matthews. Yeah, his story is pretty dark. Strange doctrine, violence.
Claiming divine authority, ordering followers around, creating his own kingdom, leading people like Mr. Pearson to ruin. It ended up in court, revealing the abuse and control involved.
It shows how religious fervor, when manipulated by a charismatic leader, can go terribly wrong.
Definitely. Exploiting faith for personal power or gain.
And Joanna Southcott,
Ah.
claiming she'd birth the next Messiah.
Another example. She built a huge following based on prophecies and writings. Predicted the birth for 1814.
Which didn't happen.
Nope. She died later that same year. But, as Barnum points out, some followers still believed, holding out hope she'd return. It just shows the incredible power of belief, how hard it can be to shake, even when faced with clear evidence.
When hope and faith are that strong, facts can sometimes take a back seat.
It seems so. It's a vulnerability that unscrupulous leaders can exploit.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Showmanship, spiritualism, scams, quackery, imposters, religious figures. If you boil it all down, what was Barnum's main goal in writing all this?
I think, fundamentally, he wanted to wise people up, to put them on guard. By showing how these humbugs worked across so many different areas, he hoped people would be less likely to fall for them.
And connecting his world to ours, it really does feel like the basic human weaknesses haven't changed.
Not one bit. That love of the marvelous, greed, fear, hope, simple curiosity, the desire to believe something amazing, they're all still right here.
And maybe modern tech just amplifies it all, makes it easier to spread humbug.
I think it does. The speed of social media, the sophistication of deepfakes, targeted scam emails, echo chambers reinforcing false beliefs. The tools are more powerful, the reach is wider, but they're often playing the same old tunes on our psychology.
So being able to think critically, to spot the patterns Barnum described, that's more important than ever.
Absolutely essential. His book is like a historical field guide to deception. Understanding the classic techniques, the appeal to emotion, the manufactured authority, the spectacle over substance, gives you a framework for evaluating claims today.
It's a reminder that the why we fall for things is often timeless, even if the how keeps evolving.
And it's fascinating that Barnum, who used humbug brilliantly himself for entertainment,
Right, the master showman.
also wrote the expose. He seemed to understand that knowing the difference between playful humbug and malicious swindling was crucial.
This has been really fascinating, a great deep dive into Barnum's world. Thanks for bringing this material to us.
It really has been enlightening. A wild ride through the world of humbug.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. Barnum argued that the reasons people get fooled are pretty constant across history. But think about today. The sheer speed and volume of information, the way things go viral, the AI fakes getting better all the time. Are we actually more vulnerable to certain kinds of humbug now than people were in Barnum's time? Or does having his insights, understanding those classic tricks he laid out, actually give us an advantage, make us better equipped to see through the noise?
It's a good question. Are we better armed or just facing a bigger onslaught? Something to think about as you navigate the deed and tinsel out there.
Definitely. Apply that Barnum lens. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.